Ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are, I hope you're doing well. UFC 316 is here. Well, it's almost here. Headlined by Merab Dvalishvili versus Sean O'Malley in the rematch, and this card is full of big names. We have Kayla Harrison taking on Julianna Peña, who is the sitting women's bantamweight champion. We have Vicente Luque taking on Kevin Holland, Kelvin Gastelum taking on Joe Pyfer, and I've been on this topic lately where I've argued that I would rather have insane performances on a card than necessarily have big names. Now, sure, if I could have both, I would want both, but if I had to pick, it would rather be the performances rather than the big names. And it's going to be interesting to see how this card compares to the likes of UFC Fight Night Burns versus Morales. I'm not talking about pay-per-view buys, I'm not talking about gate, I'm just talking about the success of the card in terms of enjoyment, in terms of excitement, those type of things, performances. But this video isn't about that. So basically in this video, I'm gonna look at every single fight on the main card of UFC 316 and argue who has more to lose in this fight, and that's basically it. So gonna start with the video. Before I do so, just a friendly reminder, if you enjoy the video, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I would really appreciate it. It goes a long way in helping the growth of this channel. Let's go. Now we're starting off the main card inside of the welterweight division, Vicente Luque versus Kevin Holland. And if we look at both fighters' respective careers within the UFC, Vicente Luque is 16-6, Kevin Holland is 14-10. Now, fun fact, my favorite N-word is knowledge, I'm going to give you some. Kevin Holland has had more fights inside the UFC than Vicente Luque. Now you could tell me, listen, I know how to do math. Vicente Luque has been inside the UFC since 2015. Kevin Holland's been inside the UFC since 2018. So despite the fact that Vicente has been inside the UFC for a longer period of time, Kevin has had more fights. And that tells you everything you need to know about Kevin Holland, which is why I think Vicente Luque has more to lose in this fight. We know of Kevin Holland and his aspirations within the UFC. He doesn't necessarily want to become champion. He basically just wants to fight as much as possible, get the bag, and piss off Rampage Jackson. That's his whole modus operandi. But if we look at Vicente Luque, I genuinely think he wants to become a welterweight champion. And let's not forget, there was a stage in Vicente's career where he was 9-1 in 10 fights, losing only to Leon Edwards. And I think Vicente wants to get back to that version of himself. Now, in his last 5 fights, he is 2-3. So I think he wants to become, once again, a legitimate contender within the welterweight division and potentially become champion. I think that is Vicente's goal still and his aspirations within the UFC. A loss wouldn't... Listen, if Kevin loses, he will still want to fight next weekend. If Vicente loses, I just think it has more impact. It's way more detrimental to his goals and what he wants to achieve. So I'm gonna pick Vicente Luque. I think he has more to lose in this fight. Then moving on to the next fight inside of the bantamweight division, Mario Bautista versus Patchy Mix. Now I know what you're thinking because I had the exact same thought. There is no way. Patchy Mix is a real name and surname of a real fighter, but let me reassure you, Patchy Mix is very real. Had Google reassure me, I didn't even need it, but journalistic standards and you can never be too safe in these streets. Patchy Mix was actually champion at Bellator. Got signed to the UFC, is making his UFC debut this weekend against Mario Bautista, who is 9-2 inside of the UFC, currently ranked number 10 inside of the bantamweight division. That's already very good, and both fighters are 32 years old. In saying all of this, Patchy has more to lose. Listen, as soon as you step foot inside of the octagon with the name and surname of Patchy Mix, the stakes are just that much higher. And as I previously mentioned, Patchy was champion at Bellator. He became champion, then he unified the belts. He also had a defense. So Patchy is as legit as they come. Speaking of come, Patchy is coming inside of the UFC with a lot of aura. He is arriving inside of the UFC with a lot of aura. He only has one loss in his career. That loss happened in September 2020. So for nearly 5 years, Patchy Mix has been undefeated. Apart from that loss, Patchy Mix is undefeated. Now, Bautista only has 2 losses in his professional career. Patchy has 1. So not a massive discrepancy, but Patchy has been champion. Patchy comes in with a lot of aura. He has fought high-level guys in Bellator. Now the pressure is going to be on to see how he competes against, the top guys inside of the UFC. I think Patchy has more to lose. I think it's going to be an insane fight. Patchy Mix, very real, a lot of aura, and yeah, the pressure is going to be on Patchy. But then moving on to the next fight, Kelvin Gastelum versus Joe Pyfer. Inside of the middleweight division, now Kelvin Gastelum is 13-9 inside of the UFC. Joe Pyfer is 4-1 inside of the UFC. And listen, this fight was initially scheduled for the 29th of March of this year, but then Joe Pyfer pulled out of the fight, basically ended up urinating on the whole of Mexico, saying he will never fight there again because he got sick. And that's why Joe has more to lose. Listen, so Joe is younger. He's turning 29. Gastelum's turning 34. Joe is 4-1 within the UFC. He has a better record if you look at your win ratio rather than Kelvin Gastelum, who's 13-9 inside of the UFC. I'd imagine going into this fight, Joe Pyfer is going to be the betting favorite, and he already pulled out of the fight. This fight that got scheduled previously. So I just think Joe Pyfer has more to lose. If he ends up losing this fight, then the whole world would say, listen, you could have taken the fight on the 29th of March. Being sick, it wouldn't have made a difference. It would not have made a difference whatsoever because you lost in this fight where you were healthy, where you were feeling good. It's in America, and yeah. So yeah, the pressure's gonna be on Joe Pyfer. Kelvin Gastelum, if he loses, he has a lot of losses on his record. I don't think Kelvin has any aspirations to become a champion. He already has a legacy within the UFC. He has a fight which is in the Hall of Fame, his fight against Izzy, where Joe Pyfer, you would imagine, wants to become middleweight champion, wants to climb the rankings and basically, be a top contender within that division, potentially one day fight for the belt. And Kelvin, I'd say, I don't even think he's at the end of his career. He's still 34 years old. That is young, relatively young for bigger divisions, heavier divisions within the UFC. But I don't necessarily think that it would bother Kelvin as much if he lost against Joe Pyfer as it would bother Pyfer if he lost to Kelvin Gastelum. The stakes are just way higher for Joe Pyfer. I genuinely think he needs this win. Then co-main event, women's bantamweight division, the champion Julianna Peña versus Kayla Harrison. Now straight off the bat, it's Kayla Harrison. Kayla Harrison has more to lose. And I know it sounds insane, Julianna Peña's the champion, surely she has more to lose. If both women had to retire tomorrow without fighting one another, Julianna Peña would probably be inside of the UFC's Hall of Fame. And I know that sounds insane, it sounds ludicrous. Julianna Peña is already a 2-time bantamweight champion within the UFC. And not only that, Julianna Peña ended up beating a champion as the biggest underdog challenger ever within the women's division, and the second biggest underdog ever within the UFC to beat the champion as the challenger. Where the same does not apply for Kayla Harrison. Now we can say in a mixed martial arts legacy, Kayla Harrison is well established. She's only lost once in her professional career. And that should also make it, more important for Kayla to win. The pressure will be on Kayla more than it is on Julianna Peña. So if Kayla ends up losing to Julianna, it would take Kayla Harrison way longer to fight for the title once again than it would take Julianna Peña if she lost to Kayla Harrison. So just a reminder, Julianna Peña ended up beating Amanda, then lost to Amanda in the rematch. And immediately after that, she fought Raquel Pennington for the women's bantamweight championship without even fighting someone else. So immediately off of her loss, she got a rematch for the belt. So if she lost again, it would probably take her 2 fights, 3 fights to fight for the championship once again. If Kayla Harrison lost, the argument the argument that, you know, the UFC is a different level, maybe she's just not that good, would start holding a lot of weight. And I think it would take Kayla a little bit longer to establish herself within the UFC to be warranted to become a #1 contender to fight the champion once again if she loses. I think Kayla has way more to lose in this fight. I think the pressure is going to be on Kayla Harrison. She's probably going to be a massive favorite. We might see Julianna Peña in a hypothetical scenario. We might see Julianna Peña beat the champion as a challenger, as the biggest underdog ever. We might end up seeing Julianna Peña as the biggest underdog champion ever to beat a challenger. So yeah, listen, it feels like Julianna Peña is playing with house money and Kayla Harrison is playing with her 401k. That's what it feels like. But then moving on to the main event, Merab Dvalishvili versus Sean O'Malley. Now, I don't necessarily have an answer for this one. I think it's genuinely tough. Now, I'm gonna present to you a case you could make for both, and in the comment section you can give me your answer. So you could make a case that Sean O'Malley has more to lose. How would you make that case? Simple. So if Sean O'Malley loses to Merab once again this weekend, and let's say hypothetically in a theoretical world Merab goes on to defend his belt another 6 times. I know that is a lot. I'm just saying in this hypothetical scenario, Merab beats Sean and he defends his belt another 6 times. Do you think Sean O'Malley will be a part of that next 6 times? I'd say the answer is no. But you know, with the UFC, you can never be too sure. We can have Sean O'Malley beating the number 12 ranked bantamweight and Dana White comes out and says, listen, Sean O'Malley, he just ended up beating the number 12 ranked bantamweight. He deserves a title fight, and then Sean fights Merab again. But you know, in a hypothetical world, if Merab was to defend his belt another 6 times, Sean would not be a part of that. That's basically 2 years plus we can take away that Sean would not see a fight as a #1 contender for a belt. So Sean, in that sense, has more to lose. Because if he loses this fight, I don't think you will ever see a championship fight again if Merab is champion. And we don't know for how long that could possibly be. But let's flip it. If Merab loses to Sean, he probably gets an immediate rematch. That's the money fight, that makes sense. Merab has defended his belt. He's on a 12-fight winning streak, so he would immediately get a rematch. In that fight, I would unanimously say the pressure would be on Merab. But in this fight, I think it's on Sean. But now the case that Merab has more to lose. So Merab is champion, which already is massive, alright? So stakes are higher. Merab is currently on a 12-fight winning streak, which is, by the way, the longest winning streak ever within the bantamweight division of the UFC. Now, you could argue that both sides, he's already achieved it, so he can lose it, doesn't matter, or massive pressure because he wants to extend it. And yeah, that I think it goes the other way. I think massive pressure, he has to extend it. So that's why that case would also make sense. And listen, Merab is genuinely on pace to become unanimously, I think he is already the greatest bantamweight of the UFC ever. But unanimously, he is basically moving towards that status, that title. Because I think the most defenses was Dominic Cruz and it was 3. So Merab, if he beats Sean O'Malley, he is closer to defending his belt, 3 times. So both would make sense. Merab's record is better than Sean. Merab's record is 12-2. Sean's record is 10-2. Merab has the longest streak, so he would have more to lose. He is the champion, he would have more to lose. Sean, that case is basically, if he loses, how long would it take him to be warranted to fight for the belt if it is still Merab? Now, we could have Merab beat Sean, Merab loses to Corey Sandhagen next, and then Sean would be warranted to fight Corey. The UFC would probably want to make that. I would want to see that. But if it's Merab, it's going to be a long time. Both of these cases make sense. So let me know in the comment section, which one do you think makes the most sense? And that's basically it for today. I really appreciate you watching this video, and yeah, if you enjoyed it, please, just a reminder, the like button, subscribe button, notification bell, I'll really appreciate that. Have a beautiful day, and if it's over, I hope it was a great day, and I'll catch you in the next one.